Thank you for tuning in. I'm Dr. Garth Fisher, and welcome to The Cutting Edge. This show is about more than just aesthetics. It's where health, beauty, culture, and innovation intersect. A space to explore the worlds of entertainment, elite performance, personal transformation, and yes, a little plastic surgery. Each week, I'll be sitting down with thought leaders, icons, athletes, artists, and experts who are shaping our world and doing it with precision, purpose, and impact. This is your front row seat to unfiltered conversations, inspiring journeys, and the science behind the beauty. Let's get started. My guest today on The Cutting Edge is one of the most legendary legal minds in American history, Robert Shapiro. He's best known as the central figure in the dream team that defended O.J. Simpson. Mr. Shapiro's legal brilliance, courtroom presence, and strategic thinking have made him a household name. But beyond the courtroom, he's a prolific entrepreneur, philanthropist, and founder of LegalZoom, revolutionizing access to legal services for millions. He's also turned profound personal tragedy into purpose with the Brent Shapiro Foundation, leading the fight against substance abuse. It's a true honor to welcome my good friend, the iconic Robert Shapiro. Thank you for coming.
Garth, it's really a pleasure, and thank you for doing this. I think this is a great thing to get you out of the operating room and let people learn about the knowledge that you have and the people that you're going to have on this great show.
Thank you. The knowledge is going to be you today, and I have to say that I've known Bob for many years, and he's one of my best friends, my dearest friends. And you know, if you just carry a card in your back pocket that says Robert Shapiro, the people that pull you over for a speeding ticket or anything, he just carries so much weight. Not that I used it, but he's a double-edged sword. You know, you get in the alley, he's an attorney, but he's also a boxer. You would not believe how much he works out. In fact, he's got a boxing shirt on today that he came from the gym, and I know how hard he works out. But it's really a pleasure to have you here. I've been wanting to talk to you.
Yeah, so. Next time you use that card, make sure you don't get arrested.
All right. Well, let's start from the very beginning. What inspired you to become a lawyer, and did you ever envision yourself as a young lawyer becoming what you've become?
So I became a lawyer by default. I went to UCLA when I was 18, very immature. Nobody in my family had ever gone to college. And my mother suggested that I be a dentist. And she said, it's better than being a doctor. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, they have to work around the clock. In those days, they did house calls. It was like a 24/7 job. She says, dentist, people are always going to need a dentist. So as an immature freshman, I enroll in pre-dentistry at UCLA. And I've got chemistry and physics and two courses I really don't understand too much about, but I'm able to kind of cram my way through until the end of the semester when they put all the pre-dental students into a very large room with a table in front of you and a box of crayons and an X-Acto knife. And they said, all right, start carving teeth.
Oh, wow.
And I went, oh, shit. I mean, I couldn't put together a model airplane. And I think, if I remember correctly, there was 10 or 12 pieces of chalk in there. When I got to the last one and it broke, I decided I was no longer going to be a pre-dental major.
Oh my gosh, what's a funny story.
So I switched and I became a finance major.
And then finance.
And then it's now 1965. I've been at UCLA for 5 years because I dropped out 1 year because of my inabilities.
Kind of a wasted year for dentistry.
Yeah. So now the draft board was right across the street from the campus. And when you turned 18, every male had to register for the draft.
I don't think a lot of people know that this was going on, but back in the day, you did have to register to fight in the wars.
It was mandatory,
right.
Mandatory. And the Vietnam War was raging. At UCLA at the time, since it was a federally funded public school, you had to be in the ROTC for at least 2 years. They had the Army ROTC and the Air Force. The Army had a 2-year mandatory and a 4-year program if you wanted to stay in. The Air Force had a 2-year program. In the 4-year program, you would go in automatically as a second lieutenant. So I'm in the 2-year program and ready to go into the 4-year program. And I have the job of being the guidon. That is, leading the troops around the track at UCLA, where all the high-ranking, a general and a few other high-ranking people came out from Washington to watch us walk around the track in cadence. And I'm the guidon. I'm carrying the flag. And my job is to lift the flag up, to start the troops, to put it under my arm, and to go forward.
Right.
And then to bring it back up, plant the flag, and stop the troop. Unfortunately, I trip right at the end. And I'm telling you, maybe a half inch of the top of the pole of the flag hit the ground.
Wow.
And I'm ready to get court-martialed in whatever kind of proceeding they had, but I was not eligible to go on to the 2-year additional program.
Fortuitous.
Okay, so now it's then I go into the Air Force. I finished the 2 years, which was actually really interesting, quite frankly. And now it's 1965. I'm ready to graduate, and the war is raging. You get classified when you turn 18, and they put you through a series of physical examinations. And all 5'9" or 5'8" of me and 140 pounds, I'm 1A, fit and ready to go. At the same time, Bruce Jenner is 4F, the world's greatest athlete.
Correct.
Okay, so.
And that's a crazy story.
Yeah, really crazy. So, what am I going to do? I'm not really equipped to be a fighting soldier on the front lines. I mean, I could do intelligence or some other stuff, but you don't get drafted for that. And a bunch of my fraternity brothers were all in the same position. And so there were several ways to get out of the draft. The one that was used the most was burn your draft card. Just protest. And a lot of people did that. That wasn't something I felt comfortable doing. Second was you could become a conscientious objector. Well, that you have to lie to do that, and that wasn't something I was willing to do. The third was to go to Canada. I'd barely been out of Los Angeles.
Right, it's too cold.
I'm not going to Canada.
Right.
The fourth was to go to graduate school.
There you go. That sounds like you.
Okay, so now thinking, well, UCLA doesn't have a graduate school of business, even though I now have a business degree. So a bunch of my fraternity brothers said, you know what, why don't we all just go to law school? It'd be a kick. And so we apply literally to 30 or 40 third-rate law schools, a couple second-rate law schools with the outside shot. And we all get accepted to the University of San Diego. We go down there, we rent an apartment.
I don't know how you study down there. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
But it sounded actually cool, you know. So it's a
better than Vietnam.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
A beautiful atmosphere. So the first day that I'm down at San Diego, I get a call from Loyola, which is at that time a second-tier law school, now a first-tier law school. And one seat opened in the night school. I said, you know, guys, look, I've got student debt. I can live at home. I can work during the day. I'm going to Loyola Night School. They were not too happy about it, but, you know.
That was right for you.
Stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
And they were able to find somebody else to move in. The first night of night school, one seat opened in the day school. I said, well, you know, instead of 4 years, it's 3 years. And so I enrolled as a first-year law student at Loyola. And turned out I did okay.
But you really didn't know what was going to happen becoming a lawyer. This was an avenue you took.
I never even talked to a lawyer. I never met a lawyer. I didn't know anything about lawyers, but there were two things that I was really good at. One was oral argument. And so not only did I win the moot court competition, but I got the highest score ever. I got 100.
Wow. I can see that.
And the second was that they give a book. It's called the American Jurisprudence Award to a student who gets the highest grade in a class. And so I got 2 of those books. And so I was talking to one of the judges, a federal judge named Manny Real. And I said, you know, I came to law school on a flyer, really, and now, you know, I'm eligible for the draft age 35, which you had to sign up for. And he said, you should be a trial lawyer. I said, well, where should I start? He said, you know, you should be a prosecutor. That's a good place to learn how to be a trial lawyer. So I applied to the county and then you had the option of 3 positions. You could apply as a DA, as a county counsel, or as a public defender. Everybody applied for all 3 in case you didn't get one of the 2, maybe you get the 3rd. I fortunately was accepted to all 3. So public defenders were all kind of long-haired guys. I had a little more hair than I have today, but I wasn't into the radical types of people that were joining the public defender's office. County counsel rarely, if ever, went to trial. They actually never heard of them. And so I chose the DA's office, and for the next 17 months, I tried every single case that every other DA didn't want to try. Mm-hmm. And then left and went into private practice.
And so this funneled you into criminal law, or I mean, you have to. I know in plastic surgery, we decide we're going to go into gynecology and neurosurgery, plastic surgery, and you had to do kind of the same thing.
Well, the district attorney is only criminal cases, and so in order to get started, then they didn't have the alternate public defender, or they now have 3 or 4 different levels of lawyers who can get appointed. So it was a way to start a practice, basically, where judges would appoint you where there was conflicts with the public defender. And then I started getting cases, and for the next 7 years, I was
you were
in court.
good at them.
I was in court every single day. A courtroom was open for the next 7 years.
And you enjoy that, being in front and just, you know, talking about your case and trying to sway the jury. You love that. You love the intensity.
You learn how to do something, and if you have a little natural talent for it, I really, really like being a trial lawyer. And you know, there were some cases I didn't like to prosecute. I didn't really believe people. In those cases, it was a felony for possession of marijuana.
Right.
Those were not cases I wanted to really be involved in. Mm-hmm. But the other serious cases, child abuse, molestation, I actually was able to try a murder case when I was in the DA's office for 6 months. So I had a lot of experience.
But these things really made your blood go and you were very inspired and passionate, enjoyed it, I'm sure.
Yeah, no,
you have to enjoy it.
It was fun. It was building a career. You know, now we're in the 70s. It's sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Right.
And everybody in those categories was getting arrested, especially the musicians. Mm-hmm. One after, I mean, they were throwing stuff out of hotel rooms. They were destroying airplanes. It was really a crazy time. And so I got a lot of those cases.
How do you handle the pressure of defending someone who the public might have already judged?
The public judges everybody.
Right, everybody.
In advance, especially now. Those days, not so much. Yeah. Those days, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have immediate access to information, and we didn't have anybody and everybody having their own ability to post something or give their opinion. But in those days, it was just simply a newspaper article or something on the news that never got repeated. And basically, what happened then is what happens now. And that is, in the criminal cases, we no longer have the presumption of innocence. We have the suggestion of guilt.
Yes, it seems
you must have done something if you got arrested.
I can imagine, like even in the Diddy case, that you could find a juror that. Do you know who this is? No, never heard of him. I mean, how do they find jurors now with so much? You've got your finger on the pulse of everything. Anybody could just look on the internet and hear something.
Well, in the high-profile cases, it's very difficult. So first, they give out jury questionnaires, sometimes very, very lengthy, 20, 30 pages, and they sift through those initially to see people who do have a preconceived notion, who do know the case, who have formed opinions, and are not likely to change their opinion.
So when you're looking at somebody to pull for a jury, is it like psychological, like I already know how this person is going to be, or is it statistical, color, age, that kind of stuff?
Well, in the criminal cases on defense, I always use a jury consultant.
Mm-hmm.
So there were people who were psychologists who had developed an expertise, supposedly, for being able to make a pretty good assessment of what type of juror would be best for your individual case.
Right.
And also, we do a lot of, we did at those times, a lot of mock trials. So we would find out what type of demographic would be best to fit the jurors we'd want.
This is Dr. Garth Fisher on The Cutting Edge. I'm here with iconic attorney, lawyer Robert Shapiro. Well, you've represented so many countless celebrities. How is it dealing with them different than a typical, what we'd say everyday person, a typical client and a celebrity difference?
Garth, that's a great question. And, the general assumption of the public is that celebrities or high-profile people are treated better in the system. Nothing could be further than the truth. High-profile people are exposed to the highest standards of scrutiny. And every time I represented a high-profile person, it wasn't a DA who just got a file and walked in and started picking a jury. Mm-hmm. They have multiple investigators on it, multiple DAs. And when it comes time to work out a plea bargain, they're always trying to hold somebody up to a higher standard.
Mm-hmm.
I remember in particular one time I represented Jose Canseco
Mm-hmm.
when he was one of the top guys in baseball, Mr. 40-40.
Right.
And he was going to get an MRI, which you're familiar with, obviously.
Correct.
In a strip center in Oakland. And it turns out that he's driving a car that's pretty recognizable. He has a candy apple red Jaguar with gold bumpers, with a license plate that says Mr. 40-40.
You knew he was coming.
And he forgot that he left his gun on the floorboard of the car where people could look in and see it. And he gets arrested. Why does he get arrested? Nothing wrong with having a weapon if it's not loaded in your car. He gets arrested for bringing a weapon onto the University of California campus.
Right.
This is a strip mall.
Right.
Well, what happened was the Graduate School of Pharmacy rented space on the second floor in the strip mall. And they now are going to charge him with what was the Black Panther law of bringing weapons on a university campus. And the district attorney comes out with a big press conference. We're not going to treat this any differently. Everybody gets 5 days in jail
Mm-hmm.
for possession of a weapon, etc. And I did a little press conference and explained that this was not Berkeley.
Right.
This was not UCLA. This was a strip mall where he went to get an MRI, and they just happened to have rented space to the Graduate School of Pharmacy, and that case ended up with a probationary sentence and an expungement.
Fantastic. How do you define justice, and has that definition evolved over your career?
This is probably the most challenging question that a lawyer faces on either side, either as a prosecutor or as a defense lawyer. And each person in those different roles will have a different view of justice. So a prosecutor's job is to see that justice is done. A defense lawyer's job is to make sure that the prosecutor can prove each and every element of a case beyond a reasonable doubt, not to make any moral judgments whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So our system of justice is based on the idea that we would rather see guilty people go free than have an innocent person convicted or, God forbid, executed. Mm-hmm. And so the balance should be and is in favor of the defense based on that legal standard. However, the judges are former prosecutors. The jurors are generally people that are pro-prosecution, and the defense lawyers have a very, very difficult job.
It is a very difficult job. There's no way I could do that. When what is your process when you're taking on a new case, and you're trying to decide that? What's your process for accepting that?
How much money they have.
How much money they have. It's got to be a part. Well, you're in such a different place now because you do a lot of civil litigation.
I only do civil. I haven't done criminal cases for a living for the last 15 years or 20 years, really.
Right.
So, but in those days, really, I mean, somebody comes in and it's Friday afternoon and it's kind of quiet and the case isn't that serious, and you have a few dollars in your pocket, you've got a lawyer.
Exactly. Is there a way that your mind has to change in doing those two cases? Is there a shift in how you have to think and act?
The civil lawyers are not going to like my answer, but
okay.
The criminal lawyers are the real trial lawyers because there's no depositions. You're walking in cold. You have a couple of reports. You have not interviewed a witness. You can interview your own witnesses, but you can't interview, or you could, but they don't generally want to speak to you if you're a prosecution witness, especially police officers
right.
will never talk to you. The civil cases, by the time you walk into the courtroom, you know every single thing that's going to happen. You've done depositions, you've done interrogatories, you know every question that's going to be asked, and you know every answer that's going to be given. And it's, quite frankly, a lot less pressure, a lot easier. And, I enjoy doing this civil litigation. Today, it's very difficult to get into a courtroom for civil litigation.
That doesn't sound like that makes sense to me. You could sue anybody, right?
Well, you can, but the backlog in Los Angeles is so enormous that I have a case now that's going to be tried in September, 5 years from the date of a wrongful death crashing of a helicopter where a person was decapitated.
Right.
And so, 5 years is a long time to wait for justice. And the judges before trials require mediation. And the majority of cases in the civil arena, especially the Me Too cases, mm-hmm. which are an epidemic now,
right.
are basically handled privately in mediation. Number one, because the accused, whether they're innocent or not, do not want the publicity of being charged civilly in a public filing, and much more expeditious, much cheaper.
That makes sense.
And so
some people don't even want to be deposed. They know that something's going to come out, and they'd rather just settle it before they,
Yeah, there's lots of reasons, but I'm looking forward to trying this very, very interesting helicopter wrongful death case.
What advice would you give to young attorneys who are just coming out now and they're starting out and they their dream is handling a big case or something like that? Is there a way what would you advise to them?
Go back to school and get an MBA. It's a much easier way to make money.
Wow. I know people ask me, would you do it all over again? I just going through medical school, and I said, if I knew I could be me, yes, but if I didn't know I could be me, I don't know that I would. It's a lot of work.
The old story, the law is a jealous mistress. applies to trial lawyers, really. If you're going to be doing contracts, tax work, there's lots of different areas, obviously, that lawyers have expertise in. But the trial lawyers, you don't want to start out defending somebody as your first case, nor do you want to be that person's client.
Right.
Okay?
You're also a philanthropist and a businessman. How do you balance those worlds now?
So my number one priority in life, as you know, Garth, is the Brent Shapiro Foundation for Drug Prevention. We lost our son 20 years ago to alcohol and drugs. And it obviously is a life-changing event for
I can't even imagine that. I don't
for anyone.
Anybody.
And, so we decided as a family that we were not going to hide the idea that this was a death by drugs and alcohol, but deal with it head on. Mm-hmm. And within 6 weeks of Brent's death, a friend of ours, his name was Michael King, came up at the memorial and said, "I'm so moved by what took place at this memorial because everybody who gave a testament to Brent's life was a drug addict."
Wow.
And we dealt with it head on with we didn't cut any corners whatsoever. And fortunately, all of those people now are sober, have families. And so I came to the conclusion that it takes a life to save a life. Mm. And that's what we've been doing. So Michael King, whose family owned King World, Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, said, "I'm so moved by this, and we've had drugs in our family. I want to make a donation to your favorite charity." And I said, "Michael, I don't really have a favorite charity, but I want to start one. I want to start one for drug awareness." Because in those days, 20 years ago, it was viewed, if you were addicted to drugs or alcohol, it was a weakness. And now we all pretty much agree that it's a disease, which it is. And that's how we started. We started with the idea of getting the public to learn about this mental disease that people have, which is addiction and chemical dependency, whether it's acquired by partying or by medical
genetics sometimes.
Genetics, 50% is genetics. So we dealt with that for about the first 8 or 9 years. We wrote several books for kids about drug prevention and the consequences of it. We did public service announcements, which today are still on our website, brentshapiro.org, which are raw, cold, and any listener who has a child over 5 should watch these with their parents. And then it got to the point where, people started talking about this as a disease. The government was talking about it. It was no longer viewed to be shameful by a lot of people. And I said, where are we going to go now with the foundation? And I said, prevention may be the next thing. So I talked to experts around the country, and I learned something that was very telling, and that is that an addict, if you reward an addict, they will generally not use drugs during the period they are given a reward.
Interesting.
And so I said, well, what if we try this with kids? That will reward kids for not trying drugs. And so we went to East LA to the Boys and Girls Club of America, one of the biggest ones in California. And it's right in the middle of gangland, liquor stores, drug dealers, but it's a safe zone. And we closed down 4 blocks. We brought in Ferris wheels, games, kind of a carnival atmosphere. We sent around vans to bring families together. And I made a pitch that if you allow us to test your kids randomly for alcohol and drugs, we will reward them. And we got 25 people to sign up. That club now has about 1,500 people annually going through the program. And the rewards are not monetary, they're experiences. So we take them to ball games, we take them to college campuses, we take them to the beach. Many of these kids have never even seen the ocean. They're from broken homes, parents in jail, horrible, horrible stories. And then about 6 years ago, we decided to give the ultimate reward of a college scholarship for sober high school graduates.
Right, I remember that.
Right now we have pretty close to 40 kids on full 4-year college scholarships to any college in the country, and quite rewarding.
It's Dr. Garth Fisher. I'm speaking with Robert Shapiro. Everybody knows him, famous attorney, brilliant man, and we're talking about the Brent Shapiro Foundation, which is a charity that he started through a very tough period in his life. And I've been to these charities that he has. These events are just the most amazing with a really great cause. And I know Robert, and I know where the money's going, and I see the changes that have been made. I've met the kids. If you're finding a place to donate, this is a great charity to donate to. And, I was wanting to get into that also, like what the kids are getting, because, we're always seeing those stories that you're putting on stage of these kids that are just doing so well. And it seems like they've just turned the page and rescued themselves and have a new walk of life that they didn't have before. And you pulled them out of a really tough place, which anybody can get in that tough place. This is not something that you choose. It's just something that happens. And I'm glad that the world is now embracing this instead of shunning these people. But thank you for what you're doing.
Well, you know what? It's personally rewarding. And I'll give you an example. And you've been to these events where we pick out a couple of kids to just talk about their life. And I remember one kid got up and he wanted to be an architect. And I said, seems kind of unusual. Why do you want to be an architect? He said, when I was growing up, our broken family had no money. And I had to make my own toys out of cardboard and wood. And, it's a tearjerker when you hear something like this. And that young man got a scholarship this summer of one of 25 people accepted to Yale in a summer architectural program. So what could make you feel better? The other thing is we run a very open financial model in our charity, and over 90% of what we raise goes directly to the programs. There is one person who is a full-time paid employee and one person who is a part-time secretary.
That's one of the things I admire. I mean, look, I don't know a lot about all the charities, but I trust you, and it's important to trust the people that are running the charity, and I know you, and it's just a very worthy charity to donate to, and I'm looking forward to this year and all the lives that you've changed. And Bob, how can people give money to that? What's the best mechanism?
The easiest way, Garth, is to go to brentshapiro.org. There's a wealth of information for people who are interested in seeing what the warning signs are for kids. They can get Save a Life cards there if, God forbid, somebody is in crisis, that people can bring somebody to an emergency room. Even if they are carrying drugs, they can't get arrested. It was the Good Samaritan law that we helped pass about 10 years ago. And the money is well spent. 90% of the money will go directly to the kids.
And this has been around 20 years now, or how long is
20
this?
years,
20
exactly.
years. Yeah, okay. That sounds like a good plan. I also wanted to bring up something that maybe people didn't know, but you were, really responsible for LegalZoom. What was LegalZoom? It sounds too good to be true. And I probably are there attorneys that are upset because you're doing this over the internet? Or tell me about that.
All right, so it's 2000, and I'm getting pitched for anything and everything that somebody thinks they can make money on. And I said, I'm a lawyer, and I want to make sure that if I do anything, it'll be the highest standards of law. And so two law school graduates, Brian Liu and Brian Lee, were friends. They had another friend, Eddie Hartman, who was a computer genius from Yale. And they came to me with this idea. And I said, I think this is an amazing idea, that we can make legal documents affordable, legally correct, and that people can get a legal document that is needed by just about everybody, especially wills or powers of attorney in the God forbid situation they have.
What's the most common document that people request?
Right now it's corporations.
Okay.
We form more corporations than everybody else
Wow.
combined in
Fantastic.
California. And, we do it faster, we do it more economically. And we started out trying to do 40 wills a month and break even, and now we're the largest company in the world doing online.
You must have a lot of attorney haters that are like, "Wow, this guy took our business."
So I tell you a crazy story. So we're getting a lot of publicity, and about 5 or 6 years into it now, where the company is becoming well recognized. I was doing commercials that ran for 5 years, virtually around the clock on every news channel. And there's a magazine called the California Lawyer, free magazine to every lawyer in California. And one of my partners calls me and says, we just got a great opportunity. California Lawyer wants us to be on the cover. And I said, this is a horrible idea. Lawyers are not people that are going to be looking at us in a favorable light to begin with. Oh no, we talked to the editor and they're going to write a beautiful story. So anyway, there's a picture of us on the cover of California Lawyer, all dressed up in nice looking suits and ties, with the caption, "These guys are trying to put you out of business."
That's funny. Well, you've done it all. One of the things that I can tell you from knowing Robert, this LegalZoom, I think that's where you go, LegalZoom.com,
Yeah.
to come up with your documents. He has just got so much wisdom, so much life experience. I've always learned that, you can never count out experiences. That's the most important value I think somebody could have when making decisions and navigating through daily issues or problems. He's so much fun. And what you wouldn't know about Robert is you could go to a boxing match, the biggest boxing match ever in Las Vegas, and you may be in the stands and you see this fashionista, this man walking through the crowd with the most beautiful outfit, and it will be Robert Shapiro, and he just is dressed to the nines all the time, and it's something that really fun to watch. And he's sitting in our studio today with the Wild Card Boxing Gym and a hat on with RS, which is, of course, his initials. And I said, where were you? Were you boxing? He said, yeah, I just got through boxing. He's coming here. He works out in the Wild Card Gym. He's always boxing. I think he had a great story boxing James Toney, who is a heavyweight champion. And, I mean, you meet this guy in an alley, he's going to take you out with his left hook or right hook, one or the other.
No, don't start advertising that. I don't want to get into any street fights.
No, he doesn't want to get into any street fights. He doesn't need to. But tell us about your love for boxing. I mean, we watch a lot of fights together.
So, when I was growing up, it was hard to believe television had not been invented yet. And so radio was what we listened to. And my dad and I
remember listening to those
would
fights.
Listen to boxing
Muhammad Ali, Frazier.
on the radio, Joe Louis.
Yeah.
And that genre. And it was fascinating. It was a right hook. It was a left jab.
Yeah.
He's going down.
You could see it.
And you were living it. And then my dad, who was really a great athlete, but also liked boxing, would take me to Hollywood Legion Stadium, which is right near where Staples is now. Now it's some type of church for local fights. Local fighters that were just, trying to make $25 for a fight. And I started really, really enjoying the sport. And I never really liked to work out in the gym. I didn't like the circuit training. I didn't like the idea of having to get dressed nice to walk into a gym to lift weights or walk on a treadmill. And I was a member of a gym and doing that stuff, and they had put a speed bag up on the roof. And I thought, that's kind of cool. And I taught myself how to use the speed bag. And then they started a class for boxing. And it was a guy who was a Marine who had fought in the Marines. And 6 people, 3 men and 3 women, showed up. And at the end of about 8 weeks, I was the only one left in the class. And I hired him to come to my house in my garage with makeshift equipment and start training. And
this is how many years ago?
This is over 35 years ago. And I just developed a real love for it. Today, I have a trainer. His name is Marvin Samodian. If you see any World Championship fights from Freddie Roach, he's in the corner. He was just in the corner with Manny Pacquiao. And I literally was training right before Pacquiao and his crew came in to train for the big fight that ended in a draw a couple weeks ago.
So he's so knowledgeable in boxing. He just knows a lot about this. And who are your top 3 boxers of all time? If you could bring them back and say, this is...
So that's a great question. So I read an article a couple days ago. Mike Tyson was asked that question, who knows a lot more about boxing than I ever will. And he had a very simple answer. He said, there's one guy I never would wanted to fight or would have fought because I would never beat him. It was Muhammad Ali. So he's always at the top of my list. Sugar Ray Robinson and Sugar Ray Leonard, who is a personal friend.
Right.
When they were going 15 rounds. Well, before that, they were going 30 or 40 rounds.
I don't think this generation's class could beat those generation back in the 70s when that, I just don't think they could do it. With Sugar Ray Leonard, Hearns, Hagler, Ali, Foreman, Frazier. I mean, those were just tough guys. Well, we're at the end of this. I'm so just honored to be able to talk to Robert Shapiro on The Cutting Edge. It's been such a great interview with him. And there's always at the end, we talk about, I'm going to answer some plastic surgery questions which have come in. So I want to do that and remind you that you can always send the questions in to www.garthfisher.com. There's a Q&A tab there that you can ask your questions, and I'll try to answer them. The first one's from Caroline, and she's actually on TikTok. She says, how do implants affect mammogram readings? And implants can affect that. There's a lot that goes on reading mammograms, but most radiologists are hip, reading them now. They'll take an extra view, and they can pretty much see everything. There's also MRIs and ultrasounds. They all give a little bit of information, but they add to the story. But I really recommend, early screening for just about everything, including, breast cancer. Your risk is around 1 in 8, in some studies 1 in 10. So I recommend every year after 35. I know insurance companies say 40. Next question. I've had thread lifts. Does this make my facelift harder to perform? It doesn't really make it harder to perform. It's just that sometimes there's scar tissue. They rip through like cheese wire. I'm not a big thread lift fan. I don't do them. I know you could get a kind of a quick fix, but I think you could probably expect those to last anywhere from 2 months to 2 years, and there may be some asymmetry with that, but I'm sure the doctor that's doing it will explain that all to you. Last question is, how long does a facelift last? My mentor that I trained with told me a facelift lasted, when asked, 8 years, 6 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days. And that was what sometimes I'll tell my patients. But, it depends on the type of facelift, maybe 2 to 3 years, 10 to 15 years, but depends on the facelift that you're having and the age and your tissue elasticity. So look forward to seeing you next week. I just want to thank KCBS, Odyssey, our sponsors, Cal and Mike, who are producers, and of course you, the listeners. I'm Dr. Garth Fisher with The Cutting Edge. We'll see you next week.